Welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be talking all about wear and tear in the lower back. We've got a few bits and pieces that I've drawn on the board. We're going to take you through sort of what it is. We're going to talk a little bit about x-rays and MRIs, and then really helping you guys understand this, because it's something that time and time again patients get the diagnosis, they go to the GP, wherever it may be. You've got degeneration. It can affect different people mentally in different ways, and we really want to kind of break some of this down, because quite often you're left in a position where it doesn't really leave you with much guidance, much hope, many prospects going forward. So we want to kind of really get rid of those sorts of feelings, because they're not helpful, and most of the reason that you're feeling that way is because of the way the information's been delivered and you haven't been educated around what's actually going on. So that's going to be really important. If you are new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. We do these live streams every single weekday, and if you're notified, if you're subscribed, you hit the notification bell, particularly on YouTube, then you're going to get alerted when we go live. And Lara's just over there looking at things, making sure in mission control that everything's working okay. And if you've got any questions, Q&A is going to be at the end, so please do post those in here. Maybe it's your previous, maybe you've been diagnosed with some sort of degenerative issue in the lower back, or maybe you know someone that has. Ask your questions away and we'll get to those at the end of the live stream. So, first and foremost, what would a diagnosis of wear and tear actually mean? Quite often it's used as just a layman's term for a number of different issues, ranging from degenerative disc disease, spinal arthritis, which would then encompass a number of these things. If you've been diagnosed with arthritis in the spine, generally speaking, they're going to be referring to osteoarthritis or spondylosis, spondyloarthrosis, basically some long word that generally starts with spondy at the start, and that's going to be sort of this degenerative thing. Now you can get other conditions that are a little bit more sinister perhaps, like spondylolosis that can be degenerative, and other conditions as well, but you're going to have some sort of diagnosis. And really, to help you understand what's going on, the diagnosis of a degree of wear and tear is not particularly helpful, because it doesn't educate you unless your doctor or the diagnosing physician is going to then pass you on to someone who can help you through that. So that's quite important. It doesn't necessarily make too much difference, but you do need to understand what's going on, because having just being told that it's wear and tear is not really very good from the point of view of imparting the patient with a degree of agency and ability to deal with the problem. So the next thing is, are we actually looking at the x-rays, or are we looking at the MRIs, or is it just, you've been told wear and tear? Seeing the images is so important. I'd always encourage you, if you've got any scans or had any scans or are having some scans of any description, to actually have a look at the images. Get the person that you're seeing to show you those images so you can see, because we then want to ask ourselves, well, one question which will give one of two answers. Where is it? Where in your spine? And if we're thinking of the lower back, because that's what we're really focusing on today, where is it in this segment, in this section of our spine? Is it everywhere? Are all of these joints clearly and demonstrably equally worn and torn? And they maybe equally have a degree of degenerative disc disease, or there's some spinal arthritis in there? Or, which is more often the case, maybe 99.9% of the case, is it in pockets? And if it is in pockets, then it might be at the L4-5, a very common one, L5-S1. If we've got long-term slouching postures and maybe this sort of position here, then sometimes we see it in the upper part of the lumbar spine. So that's a very important question, and the answer to this is vital, and you can only really glean that from seeing it, because quite often, if you just get the diagnosis of you've got wear and tear in the spine, they won't necessarily go into the detail, and seeing it is so very important. If it's a good radiology report, then they will obviously put in what specific segments there are. But then the comment that we hear time and time again, hence the angry eyes, is you're just old. It's just age, it happens to everyone, don't worry about it, there's nothing you can do, it's just part of the aging process, which kind of leaves you walking out of the room going, what do I do now? Because I can't undo being the age I am, that doesn't really help. But the thing that I want to get across to you guys in today's live stream is really about, if this is the answer, it's in pockets, this is really fundamentally a useless statement. In actual fact, in my opinion, it's really a malicious statement, maybe not with malicious intent, but it's a malicious statement because it leaves the patient otherwise confused about what's going on. Because by definition, you can't just be old and have one or two of these segments have miraculously worn. The L5-S1 has aged somehow 10 years beyond the rest of the lumbar spine. That doesn't happen. That's not something that's sensible. what does make sense is that perhaps we've been holding abnormal postures, there's been abnormal strain through that section, which is why it has worn. Yes, the degenerative process is a result of repetitive strain on specific parts of our bodies, and if the X-ray or the MRI or the CT scan came back and said there is uniform gross degenerative change of equal proportion throughout the entirety of this person's lumbar spine and hips and sacroiliac joints, then we could say, do you know what, maybe that is the case, maybe you're just a bit old. But that never comes back. It's always going to be pockets of wear and tear, some further on than others. And that's when we can, if we can get that statement first and foremost, then dealing with wear and tear in the spine or in the lower back, we can actually be productive. Why is it that I have most of the wear or most of the degenerative change in my L45S1? Is it because when I was 20 I ruptured a disc doing a heavy deadlift or something like that, or I was in an unfortunate accident? Is that perhaps why what's kicked it off? Because previous injury in a segment can, if it's not dealt with properly, lead to accelerated wear and tear in that particular area. That can sometimes be the case. But more often, a more helpful look at this situation is going to be to look at the alignment of the spine. In order for your spine to effectively load, it needs to have a normal, good alignment. So it needs to have a nice smooth curve through the lumbar spine here. We need to have more curve at the bottom, less at the top. It's formed as an ellipse, not a circle. So we should have a nice degree of backward bending down at 4-5 and 5S1. But all too many of us, as you've probably heard us talk about in previous live streams, are sat for long periods, slouched in these chairs. Well, if we're sat in this position here, of course we're going to wear and tear through the lower lumbar spine more so than we otherwise should, because it will go from a position or an arrangement of maybe something like that, where we've got the appropriate pressure through the front and back of the vertebra, to now all of a sudden it's in that position, and we're putting substantially more pressure through the discs, through the front portion of the vertebra, hence the degenerative disc disease. So if you've been sat like that for extended periods over months or years or decades, then of course that area is going to become worn. And that may not be particularly good news, because at the end of the day the area is worn, there is wear and tear in the back at maybe the L45 segment. But at least you now understand what you need to do about it. What can we do to improve and move on? Because we understand that I have, me as the person with this radiology finding or with this back problem, I have understood that my degeneration or my damage or my injury is predominantly located down at the 4-5 or the 5S1 in the lumbar spine, and I have some alignment issues, maybe with my sacrum. Instead of being in a nice position like so, with that nice neutral curve, I've tucked that bum under and I'm walking around like that all day. Well, that is going to make that spine very, very straight, and we're going to load more through there, so we can then take steps to start to undo that. And really, that comes to hopefully the more useful part of today's live stream. So if you've got any questions, I'm going to go through this next bit, and then if you've got those questions, please do start posting those in the comments below so Lara can read those out and we'll get to those. This comes to the really crux of what we do in the Back and Shape program, why we've put it together and how we've put it together. Many of you don't have the unique understanding of what is going on exactly in your lumbar spine. You maybe haven't got x-rays, or you haven't seen the x-rays and been able to compare them to the normal to understand and appreciate what exactly is going on, but you may have a 4-5S1, a lumbar 4-5 or L5S1 injury. With the Back and Shape stuff, we work on shooting for normal. We know that if we support the natural lordosis, for example, when we're doing that towel exercise, it's going to hold us in the closest possible position to normal. And for many of you with a more degenerative condition, maybe some sort of arthritis down here in the lower back, it is going to be a little bit more uncomfortable to begin with, moving that spine back towards a normal position. But it's working to take the repetitive strain that's maybe been on there for the last 10, 20 years, to start to work to undo the way in which that strain has been focused down at this lower region of the spine, by doing some targeted exercises to undo that, and using that towel position to help, at least periodically through the day, put our spine into a normal position. The next thing we want to do is we need to build stability. Quite often through either recurrent back pain or lifestyle that then results in recurrent back pain, we haven't got the stability, the protection and the engagement with these muscles through here because of the way in which we live on a daily basis. We don't have good core strength. We don't have strength in the posterior muscles through here because we spend all day like this. They're stretched out, and any treatment that we try and do to alleviate some of this degenerative disc disease or this wear and tear in the lower back is only serves to further stretch it out. People try to do these knee hugs and things to stretch and stretch and stretch, and we don't need that. We need stability. That's what we need to start with. Protect this area so that a vulnerable area can have a little bit more support. And it's worth noting, this obviously being an approximate drawing of the normal position of these discs and the normal space where the nerves come out of, which would be just in here. When we've got that degenerative disc disease, for example, or general spinal arthritis, the hole here gets a lot smaller where the nerve comes out. So even a relatively minor injury, a minor strain, a low build-up of inflammation, maybe occupies half of this space, will occupy more or less all of this space and give you disproportionately more painful, more noticeable symptoms than the segments or the person that doesn't have that degeneration. So we need to work on building protection and stability if we have this degeneration in our spine, this wear and tear in our spine, to make sure that the likelihood of us getting a minor strain is diminished. And as we are getting a little bit older, that challenge does become more of a challenge. It's more important that we work towards that. So one thing I often say to people that ask, oh, are these exercises okay for me? I've got this in my spine, I've got degeneration in my spine, or I've got other issues, wear and tear in my back. I'm not sure if I'm able to do these exercises, or maybe I should wait. The only thing with all these exercises, they are very safe. The ones we talk about in the Back in Shape, they're very safe for your spine. But if you have wear and tear in your spine, you just need to be more careful. You need to be more coordinated. You need to be more diligent with your exercises and make sure that we do them correctly. Because if we don't do them correctly, we're not going to get the right movement patterns to support and protect our spine. It is possible for everybody, but it does take a degree of work. And someone who's 20, who's got a minor disc bulge, is going to find they can get away often more with inappropriate technique than someone who has more severe degeneration or more complex issues in the spine. So the technique is everything, but we need to build stability, to build protection for this structure down here that's got the degeneration. We want to overcompensate. We always want to overcompensate as we get older when we've got this wear and tear in our spine, because by overcompensating we have a greater reservoir for capacity. If the most we've ever lifted is maybe a 5 kilo or 5 kilos of resistance, and we just avoid lifting anything, what happens when someone, when you have to help your other half out with the shopping bags and the shopping bags are 10 kilos? All of a sudden you've got a shopping bag that you've got to lift, and that's the heaviest thing you've lifted in the last 5 years. We have a problem. What if you need to help someone move the sofa? You know, we can try and work through life when we have these degenerative issues and say, I've got a bad back, I can't do these things. But at some point, you will then go and do something, and maybe that flare-up has settled down and you haven't got as much in the way of pain, it's very low and manageable. But unless we overcompensate and work hard to build up the strength in our back, something will happen. We'll have to take the suitcases to the airport, we'll have to help the other half with the sofa, we'll be doing the hoovering and have to move a wardrobe or whatever it may be. And if that's the biggest thing you've ever done, the most strenuous thing you've ever done, we're going to get in a lot of trouble because we haven't trained for it, we don't have the adaptation in our muscles for it, and we have a degenerate segment that is a weak link in the chain. So please, please, please do overcompensate. As we're going through, many of you who are in their Back in Shape Premium will be doing those exercises, you'll be going forwards and going forwards. It's not how fast that we progress through what we call the phase 2 and phase 3, which is building strength and stability in this region and below and above. It is how consistently we do it. So please don't get to the point where you feel, oh, I'm feeling okay now, I'll just stop doing my exercises. No, we continue to make improvement, and if we have any of these sorts of issues, any wear and tear, we must work on overcompensating by building up strength and stability. And then finally, which almost comes back into point number 1, is adjust our lifestyle. Many of you will be, over the years, maybe not now because of lockdown, and the way in which lockdown has changed everybody's lives and the way in which we do things. Many of you will have been in maybe jobs where you've been sat for long periods of time, or had periods in your life where you're sat for extended periods. A lot of people don't consider, especially here in London, you may be on the tube for 1 hour on the way in and 1 hour on the way out in the morning, then you sit in an office for 7 hours, so you've already got 9 hours of sitting down. Then when you get home, you sit down, maybe with friends, or maybe at home having dinner, and then we sit down again to watch TV. How much of our day is spent sat down, slouched over in this position, and then we wonder why we have some degenerative change in that lower back. So we need to make these lifestyle changes, and the sooner we can make those, the better. The sooner we can make those changes, the sooner we can arrest the wear and tear process. And one final point, and maybe a question that will come up, is with the wear and tear process, we can't undo it per se, but we can really arrest that process if we know why it's wearing why specific joints are becoming more worn than others. We can work to understand that, and in a lot of cases we can work to oppose that, so we start to arrest that wear and tear process. Because the amount of times we've come in with a radiology report that says normal age-related wear and tear in this person's spine, you look at the images on file and they look exactly the same for two different people, the reports say the same for two different people, and there's 30 years difference between the two people. It doesn't add up, it's not helpful, it's not helping the patient. So with that rant over, we'll get into Q&A.
Okay, awesome. Good morning, everybody. Yes, please continue putting your questions in the comments. I've got a comment here from Kate. She's looking forward to this one on degeneration issues. As the older you get, I've just thought that you just have to live with it as nothing can be done.
No, I mean, on the comment of the older you get, you know, people will say, oh, well, you're more likely to. Yes, if you've been on the planet for a longer period of time, you are more likely to repetitively done things that are not helpful for your back. So that statement is true, but it's not a foregone conclusion. That's quite important to recognise.
Also, she also goes on to say, by taking the collagen, protein and other supplements, does this in the long term help to slow down aging and degeneration?
I think combining all of it, so not just the supplements, but doing the work, doing the rehab, getting the appropriate nutrition, getting the appropriate exercise and awareness of how we use our body, those things will all contribute to help slow down and arrest this process, especially if we have a unique understanding of our own spine. Certain things, sometimes if the alignment issues are just really bad, they're very difficult to properly arrest. But if we can get our spine back to a normal position and reinforce that position on a daily basis, then we will really help with getting appropriate nutrition to these segments. You might have joined us for the live stream a couple of weeks ago where we talked about the effect on the dehydration of the discs with bad posture for an extended period of time. Well, that dehydration affects the ability for those discs to get rid of waste products and get new nutrition into those discs, because it requires osmosis and the movement of materials in and out, up and down concentration gradients. And if we're constantly in a state of dehydrating those discs, or putting pressure on those structures, we're not going to get the adequate exchange of nutrients, and then things don't get repaired. Many people, just moving over to a slight side note, which is completely tangential, a tangent, is that many of you will notice certain businesses that have gone out of business on your high street will close down temporarily. Maybe they haven't closed down permanently, but you walk along the high street or see the pub that used to be a thriving business, and you see all of a sudden there's weeds everywhere. There's, you know, the drain pipe's not quite where it needs to be, etc. When we don't get a regular supply of nutrition, regular care and attention on a structure, it will start to wear, it will start to degrade. And that's the same thing with getting nutrition or resources in and out of certain areas of our body. You can see it happening in businesses around with the current climate, but it also happens in our body, and that's maybe a good way of seeing it in the real world.
Okay, awesome. Cheryl has asked here, are degenerative facet joints the same as degenerative discs? Good question.
Well, yes and no. Yes, they're degenerative in the same way that they are degenerative. We have to bear in mind, I've done a perfect example. This is a very, very poor quality drawing. Please do better than mine, Cheryl. But as the discs drop, the facet move closer together. So it's very difficult to have one without the other, because these are obviously connected by bone. You can see that if I half the height of this disc, these two bones move close together, and therefore the whole thing's going to be irritated. So you very rarely get any sort of disc problem without a degree of facet involvement. The stresses and strains may be somewhat different depending on what exactly the problem is, but they're slightly different because the facet joint is a high-line cartilage joint like the knee, and the disc is obviously slightly different in structure. It's got a unique structure, but the outcome is going to be fundamentally the same. It's going to decrease the quality of those segments and create the opportunity for more information to build up in a smaller space. There may be some nuance changes depending on the X-ray or an X-ray analysis of the alignment of your spine, but that could be lots of different permutations there.
Okay, I hope that helps, Cheryl. Karen has asked here, is degeneration going to cause pain on its own, or is there going to be another injury that's going to happen as a result before the degeneration is identified?
So generally speaking, it is the degeneration that takes place over a long period of time, unbeknownst to you. And then it's the fact that this structure is weakened and the lack of muscle support. Basically the absence of all of these good things that I said you guys need to do, the absence of normal position, the absence of stability, the absence of appropriate protection for that area allows it to degenerate slowly as more stress is going through it. And that degeneration process, the process of this bone coming here, isn't necessarily a problem, apart from when it gets very advanced and that bone may actually be in the vicinity of a nerve, which then grates over it, which is very different, and you get quite far on before that was happening. But what's essentially happening is all of these things are increasing the likelihood that we injure a structure that doesn't have the capacity to recover as quickly as this one here, and that is going to experience pain symptoms that are higher. So most people will have had the degeneration. I see it time and time again when they say, well, I've only had my back problem for 3 weeks, and we see that they've got no disc left. And you may have got away with having the degeneration, with having the absence of all of these things for decades, but it will catch up with you. And this is the big problem I have with a lot of those MRI. There's little where people misquote or cherry pick information and say, well, if we took a bunch of people and we MRI'd them, we'd see that a lot of them have disc bulges. It may not be a problem right then, but it will become a problem because that identifies that there have been weaknesses and failures in that structure. And at some point, maybe with a good bit of luck, you're going to go all the way through for years, but maybe you won't. And if we know about it, we can mitigate these issues earlier, and that's quite important.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, if you have had an an X-ray, and you've got a radiology report, when should you be concerned about the mild degeneration in your spine? Because sometimes we see very young patients with degeneration and older patients with very little. When should you be concerned about it?
As soon as you know about it.
Okay.
I mean, the correct answer to that question is you should take care of your back from day one. And a lot of parents, or everyone really, when they're looking after kids, sit up straight, don't slouch on your phone, stop being over like that, get out and get some exercise, do all these things while you're they're looking, get off your phone, or maybe you're working at the computer, get off your phone, it's bad for your posture. These things happen all the time, but we tend to, because life happens, and it's not a dig at everyone, it all happens to all of us. But as life gets more and more busy, we tend to put ourselves second. We've got to help someone else out, we've got to get to work, we've got to do this, we've got a meeting, etc. We tend to put ourselves last in that sort of hierarchy of needs, and really looking after ourselves should be the most important thing, because we've got to live with this every single day. You can't really repair the back in that respect. We've only got one spine, so we need to look after it compared to other things that we can maybe get replacements of. So please, it's the sooner you start looking after yourself, encouraging a normal position, having good stability and protection for our back, overcompensating just for general activities, and adjusting our lifestyle, having a good lifestyle, exercise, etc., good diet, all those sorts of things are going to help us live a better life. And I think it's a Chinese proverb, says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. Don't let the fact that we have degenerative change in our spine stop us from doing things, but let's just start making things better by doing these sorts of things.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Jeannie has asked, good morning, can excess weight cause more wear and tear on joints? Simple one. This is a load bearing structure. So the more load it has to bear, the more it's going to be exploited. So are we overcompensating with our muscles to provide extra muscle mass maybe? Or if it's extra fat tissue, etc., then the more we have to carry, the more a weight bearing structure is going to suffer. So it's kind of simple as that, really. Women tend to have a better deal here when it comes to back pain because of the hormone differences in men and women. You tend to lay down more of the fat below the spine. So obviously that's going to be a bigger issue for the knees and ankles, or an issue still for the knees and ankles, but it tends to not be as bad. Men tend to lay weight around here, and therefore that tends to have a worse impact on the spine. But then again, men tend to have a little bit more muscle mass, so they might be overcompensating for that, etc. But that's that. The more weight we're carrying, the more that load bearing structure is going to be under pressure, the more abnormal alignment issues are going to create strain on specific target regions. Okay, another question here from either Jan or Jan. I have spondylolitis of the spine, horrible pain right up to my head. What can I do?
With those sorts of things, if it is, so some of these issues
Quite
can be more of a
question.
systemic issue, and it may be an autoimmune condition or other bits and pieces, so there might be something a little bit more digging to do there with regards to that specific one. If it's some sort of autoimmune condition, then that's a little bit different. If it is the fact that there's just inflammation in one of these segments in the lumbar spine, and it's affecting the muscular chains that go up and down here, then we need to just do exactly the same thing. We need to take pressure off the injured structure, go back to that basic phase 1 work that we do, inflammation on the local region that's inflamed and injured, to reduce that, get it under control, do the phase 1 exercise to improve hip mobility, do the towel exercise to unload that lumbar spine, start with that and then start working to build up some strength and stability and protection for the area, because chances are if that sort of pain's been going on for a long period of time, it's going to take it out of you. You're not going to be doing anything, or you're going to really struggle mentally to want to do any sort of physical activity. So we start to lose muscle mass, and as we lose muscle mass and as we lose capacity to do things physically, the problems, the risks that we face increase. So trying to get on top of it with the phase 1 work and then slowly moving through the phase 2 over a slow period of time. Don't set yourself too higher milestones or goals in short periods of time, but making that 5% improvement every month in terms of our strength and stability adds up over a long period of time. And if these sorts of issues have been building up over 10 years, don't spend 10 weeks or 10 days to try and fix them. It takes longer.
Yeah, if you've got any more sort of information on your case that you want to leave in the comments, please do, and we'll try to help you a little bit more. So, Monica has left a comment here. She said, over the years I've always been told that I've got wear and tear, and it's my age. So I've just gone away, never had a scan. I've learned more in the last few months as being a member. I'm a different person now. I actually feel in control. Thank you.
That's something that really bothers me, because Veronica says she's been told she has wear and tear over the years, but hasn't ever had a scan. How do you know? How do you know you've got wear and tear, or how does the person know that you've got wear and tear? That really, really bothers me when people talk about that, because they're not getting down to the problem and being able to say, right, this is where the issue is. Like we said, is it everywhere or is it in one area? If it's been in one area for the last 10 years, then that's really, really frustrating, and I'm sorry there, Veronica, but that's the problem. Maybe someone else watching this has had that diagnosis for the last week or 2 weeks, and maybe you can learn from Veronica's unfortunate experience and go and get some imaging done. No one knows you've got wear and tear until they've actually seen it. I mean, there are things you can do to understand an idea that you will have it, but we need to know where, what, why, and how bad is it, so we can actually formulate a more accurate strategy of moving forwards. That's very, very important. Okay, awesome. Cam has asked on YouTube, what supplements do you recommend to help support the joints? The main one we use is the joint drink. So it's the one that I'll put a link in the description. It's just a joint support drink. It's collagen, type 2 collagen. That's going to help with the hyaline cartilage. We did a live stream the other Monday, I think it was, on the collagen in particular. Type 2 collagen is really, really prevalent in the cartilage, which is going to be the facet joints that we mentioned earlier, one of the questions, and then the nucleus of the disc as well. So that's what we recommend. It's also got glucosamine, MSM, and a few other bits and pieces in there as well. But that's what we recommend. That's what Laura and I take in the mornings. Okay, wonderful. Kate. Kate has just said here, thank you. This is really valuable. I know what is going on and why and how important the rehab is, etc. It should really help so many people. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. I think that is actually everything for today. Cam said thank you. Brilliant. Thank you, Cam. Okay, wonderful. Yes, that is everything. Awesome. Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us, guys, and thanks for all those questions. If you're watching this, wear and tear in the spine, having this diagnosis is like Veronica's experience. Not having the scans is really frustrating, but don't worry, there are things that you can do. Even without 100% knowing these things, if you haven't got the benefit of diagnosis, proper diagnosis, try and get one, but in the meantime, work on shooting your spine to a normal position, work on building stability and protection and overcompensating for any sort of degenerative change that's happening here, because it's going to support your structure, reduce your likelihood of future injury, and help you heal this time around. So hopefully it's been helpful. If you do find this video helpful, you've watched it, or maybe you know someone else who would benefit from this video, then please do share the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and please feel free to share these on Facebook as well. With that being said, everyone have a great day, have a great afternoon, and we will see you guys tomorrow with another live stream. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.